Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So for today's lesson, I am going to knock at your mind and heart, and I will represent myself as your conscience. Since I believe that we all have conscience every time we do bad things or things which are unpleasant to other people, conscience will surely knock, or our conscience will surely haunt us. So, in order for us to understand a deeper meaning or a deeper understanding of conscience, so today we will be talking, um, or we are going to define conscience. We are also going to identify the different kind of conscience or the different types of conscience, because we are fully unaware that every time conscience will haunt us, and we actually don't know that there is a specific identification of a conscience. And lastly, hopefully, we will be able to evaluate ourselves as to what types of conscience that we have done in the past or maybe in the present time. So to start with, let us first define conscience. What is really conscience? Like, if only I could ask you right now, and if only you could give me an answer right away, I'm gonna be asking you, each one of you, what really comes into your mind when you hear the term or the word conscience, since I believe that we all have heard this term before. Conscience. Whenever we do bad things, there is this term who always haunt us, and that is conscience. So by definition, conscience is an inner feeling or voice viewed as acting or as a guide to the rightness or wrongness of one's behavior. Actually, many people believes that conscience is the gauge of morality. It also acts as a barometer or a measurement to either as mandated by the authority, the norms in the society, the natural law, or the religious laws that determines how things should be or should not be. And by the etymology of the term conscience, it actually comes from a Greek word, which is cum alia synthia, which literally means a man's correct application of knowledge. Conscience is actually a lived knowledge of good and evil. It is our judgment about how we should act, and it is also our commitment to do so. It is also a person's moral faculty, the inner core, and the sanctuary where one knows oneself. So for like how many times, every time we did bad things, we always say that we were haunted by our conscience. But what is that type of conscience that is haunting us? So we'll be able to know the different type of conscience by having a different scenario. Okay, so let's have the first scenario. So it is the night before the final exam, and you feel lazy in studying or reviewing, and you plan to cheat. However, your mind is telling you that cheating is wrong. So you have the feeling of not doing it. Therefore, your conscience is knocking at you, and your conscience forbids you to commit unpleasant actions. Therefore, you haven't done bad actions because your conscience is telling you ahead that it is not good to cheat. So this type of conscience is what we call the antecedent conscience. So antecedent conscience, by definition, is the judgment of a person deciding on a moral matter prior to acting on it. Therefore, before you do or before you act negative actions, your conscience is already reminding you that it is not good. The actions that you plan to do is not good. So this type of conscience is either a commands or it will forbid you, it will give you counsel and permits the performance of an act. So if it happens to you before where you plan to do negative actions and you plan to do unpleasant actions, but um, you chose not to do so because your conscience is already telling you that what you plan is actually not good. And the antecedent conscience actually occurs when the judgment is placed before an act is committed. So there is already a judgment before the act. Okay, so let's proceed with the next scenario. So in dire need of money, you decide to go to your friend's boarding house and you're hoping that he can lend you some money. And as you approach the door to his boarding house, you saw a 1,000 peso bill on the floor and you picked it up because the usual or the famous saying that goes, finders keeper. So you pick it up and then you go home immediately. And you were delighted with the event. You thought of going to Mang Inasal. Among the other fast food chain, Mang Inasal yun. You have Jollibee, McDo, and whatsoever, but still you chose to go to Mang Inasal. And you had a bountiful dinner at Mang Inasal. However, after eating dinner, as you were about to go to sleep, you were haunted by the thought that you spent a money which is not yours. And you thought that you used the thought of you using a money which is not yours keep haunting you. And this is actually this is common to everybody. No, every time we do bad things, every time we do unpleasant things, there are really times that the thought of us doing such negative things keep on haunting us. And we even there will be times where it will be hard for us to go to sleep because it's well, I'm just talking of light negative actions because there are also those heavy negative actions where you killed someone. But stealing for me is already a big issue. No, because that is actually in the Ten Commandments of God that thou shalt not steal. Now going back to the scenario, the action has already been done. If you're going to compare it to the antecedent conscience, if that is an antecedent conscience, it will come into your senses, or you will come to your senses not to do the bad actions. It could be if you're going to change the scenario for antecedent conscience. It could be you're going to pick that 1,000 peso bill and you're gonna ask someone if whoever lost a 1,000 peso bill, and then you're gonna um return that one to the rightful owner. Or you're gonna ask your friend, perhaps, you're gonna tell him or her that you found a 1,000 peso bill on the floor, and still the purpose of you coming to your friend's boarding house will still be fulfilled, which is you're gonna ask for some money and hoping if your friends can lend you some. But since we are already in a scenario two, and this is another type of conscience wherein a negative action has already been done, but after the action, conscience is haunting you. This is what we call the consequent conscience. So in a consequent conscience, um, the judgment of the mind on the morality of an action is already performed. So the conscience either approves what has been done, giving peace to the mind and spiritual joy, or disapproved or what was done, thus causing remorse and a sense of guilt. For a person who doesn't have, is there such person who doesn't have conscience? I don't think um they feel the guilt. Well, actually, in reality, there are those type of person who doesn't really feel the guilt. They are those type of person who are already fond of doing bad things. Yeah, they were not haunted by their conscience. So if I'm going to ask you the difference between the antecedent conscience and the consequent conscience, in the antecedent conscience, the action has not been done because the judgment already occurs prior to the action. And the consequent conscience, the action has already been done, and then the conscience happened or the judgment happens after the actions. Okay, so let's proceed with scenario 3. So in here, we have here a student of GE8 under me, Ms. Dumpa, was given a grade of 1.2 for the prelim. That's quite big, 1.2. Okay, so let us assume that this student is you. Okay, assume that this student that I'm referring here is you. So you know for a fact that you got a low scores since you were not able to take 3 minor quizzes and you failed during the major exam or the prelim examination. And then your best friend's family name is listed after you. Therefore, in the class record, your your best friend's family name is listed after you. And your best friend got a failing remark. Although she always got high scores in the minor quizzes and she also passed the major exam or the prelim examination. As a result, you approached your teacher and verified things despite of the fact that you may have a failing grade. So this is somehow a little um let's say a little identical, should I say, to antecedent conscience. However, in antecedent conscience, um, you are like still trying to figure things out whether you are going to do the actions or not. But still, the judgment already happened before the action. In this case, you approached the teacher right away and you tried to verify things. Although you know the consequence of doing such, that you will really have a failing grade when you go or approach your teacher and you verify things and tell the teacher that, ma'am, you might got an error in writing our or in uploading in posting our grades because my best friend got a low got a failing remark and I got a passing remark. So despite of having the fact that you've got a failing grade, you still approach the teacher. And this type of conscience is what we call the true conscience. So So, in the true conscience, this is a type of conscience that judges things as they are. It judges the action as good and bad as bad. Okay, so I hope you see the difference between the three conscience that were presented to you. Okay, so again, a true conscience, it judges the action as good and as bad. It will never be good as it could be bad, but bad or sometimes good. No, it good as good and bad as bad. Okay, so let's proceed to the next scenario. There. So scenario 4. So a PMI student got caught in a buy-bust operation, wag naman sana, which is related to selling of illegal drugs. And during the interrogation, the student told the police that he was forced to do so because of extreme poverty and it aided his education, which is really, this is somehow a reflection of reality that mostly a lot of people nowadays have done illegal things because of poverty, but still Doing illegal things is not the solution to the problem. When you already have a negative energy, for example, never add it up with another negative energy. If you are in an extreme poverty, you need to do things which are right, things which are acceptable by the society, acceptable by the norms. Because when you do another or things, you are already in a negative state, and then you will do another things which are also negative, it will definitely carry you down. It will definitely bury you down. Just the same in the scenario, due to extreme poverty, the only solution that he could see in the PMI student is to sell illegal drugs, which is really prohibited. Take note that this kind of solution is not really acceptable. Okay? And this type of conscience we're talking about is what we call the erroneous conscience. It judges things in a distorted manner and consider bad act as good act as bad one. Because for him, since he is already in an extreme poverty, for him, selling illegal drugs could definitely help him. And for him, it is good. And take note, whatever reason is that, whatever reason that you may say, it is never good. Do not add bad things, or yeah, do not pile all the bad things that you have done. Bisag asa pa ng matahan, it will never be good. And in erroneous conscience, merbag, you feel the guilt. You feel the guilt. But there is this thing that would remind you that, hey, it it is actually good because it aided your education, and it helps you from poverty. So murag nabawi si conscience, nawala si conscience because you injected it into your mind that what I did is actually good because it helps me, which is actually wrong. And erroneous conscience is also what we call ignorant conscience. And remember, always put this in your head: ignorance of the law excuses no one. Remember that. Even though the PMI student in a scenario would tell that one to the police officer that he just did those things because it aided his education and because of extreme poverty, still, it is not valid. Going back to what I just said earlier, ignorance of the law excuses no one. Okay, so let's proceed. Scenario 5. A pregnant woman discovered that she is having an ectopic pregnancy. She decided to remove the fetus as early as possible to save her life from possible complications. She aborted the baby because she has to live for her two children that are still dependent to her. In this scenario, it's kind of like a conflict or a conflict between immoral issues. Ectopic pregnancy is actually uncurable. There were no medicines that were invented to cure ectopic pregnancy, because ectopic pregnancy actually occurs when a fertilized egg implants and grows outside the main cavity of the uterus. And the only solution for this really is to take out the baby. And in this scenario that I presented to you right now, I have mentioned the word abort, which is really the solution. But in this scenario, this is like, um, let's say, we all know that abortion is illegal. But for the sake of saving the life of the mother, in the sense of science, this is legal. Okay, as long as it is well, recommended by a doctor and it is done to save mother's life. Maybe in the sense, I am actually having I don't know how to say the term, but we've mentioned abortion, and I'm a pro-life member. I always protect the dignity of life. No, abortion per se is really an illegal thing, and it is not acceptable by the church. I wouldn't say that it's not acceptable by the law because there are other countries right now who legalized abortion, but they have their reasons, and the church also have their reasons. And as stated in the Philippine Constitution, the 1987 Constitution of the Philippines, that there must be a separate, the church and the state must be separated. So let's just go back to the scenario 5. We might go deeper, deeper, and deeper. Okay, so going back, the in the situation, if the mom knew that she's having an ectopic pregnancy, but in this scenario, it was her. It was her who really decided to remove the fetus right away. But in a real situation, the doctor would really recommend to take off the baby. But abortion is, let me make up my mind. So in the sense of abortion, I have seen mga videos as to how to abort a baby. It's like there's a suction and gunting-guntingon ang fetus before siya i-suction. But in a legal sense, no, a doctor also have their own way as to how to take off the baby. So maybe not the right term there is not to abort, or should we say to save the mother's life through a proper or through a right process of saving the mother's life. I don't think abort is the right term. Okay. So this is what we call a certain conscience. So a certain conscience, it is a subjective certainty of the legality of many moralists. It is a state of mind when it has no prudent fear of being wrong about its judgment on some moral issue and firmly decide that some action is right or wrong. Because the main goal here is to save life. Therefore, it doesn't really question the legality of the action. Because again, the goal is to save life. Therefore, in this sense, the term abort there has been only in this situation, only in this situation. The term abort there is considered right because the result for that would definitely save life. Okay, so let's proceed. So scenario 6. A student of PMI who originally lived far from the city and is currently residing in a boarding house near the school building. So there is only 100 peso left in her wallet, and she still need to pay her Shopee order that is worth 300. So in order for her to pay her parcel, she decided to steal money. She saw her roommate's wallet on the table and she grabbed a 500 peso bill from the wallet and used the rest of the money for food and other stuff. And take note, if we are going to analyze the situation, the girl has only 100 peso left. So definitely she needs 200 peso for in order for her to pay her Shopee parcel. And take note, the money is only intended for the Shopee parcel. How about the money for her food? And in this case, she saw the wallet of her roommate and she took 500 peso bill on her roommate's wallet. And she only needs 300. So if she's going to pay the 300 for her parcel, so there's 200 left. And we're going to add pa the 100 peso bill that she has. So she have 300. And instead of um keeping the money, perhaps she instead used the money for food and other stuff. So to make the long story short, this person here is maluho. The money never slips in her wallet. So in this scenario, she decided right away of doing negative act. And without any hesitation, she really do it. And this is what we call the doubtful conscience. A doubtful conscience is a state of mind when it cannot certainly decide for or against a course of action and leaves the person unsure about the morality of what one is to do and what one may have done. So surely a doubtful conscience is you decide to do bad things just to satisfy your needs. Okay, so when you decide to steal food or money for your starving children, you decide to cheat because you wasn't able to study. So it could really benefit you. So doing the actions without hesitation for the benefit of yourself. So that's doubtful conscience. Next, scenario 7. So a person at a grocery store gave 100 peso to the cashier for an 88 peso worth of purchased grocery supplies. However, the cashier is in a hurry. Instead of 12 peso change, she erroneously gave 15. So the person is in dilemma whether to tell the cashier and bring back the 3 pesos or to keep it instead. In the end, this person gave back the 3 peso change. Maybe this happened to you sometime or maybe before it happened to you na mistakenly the cashier will give you more than masuklian mo sobra. And although there are times na masuklian ta og kuwang, but mostly masuklian tag sobra. But in that sense, the cashier is in a hurry. Instead of giving her a 12 peso for change, the cashier gave her 15 peso. And she's having second thought whether is she going to return the 3 peso or she will just bahala na lang, iyahan na lang ng 3 peso. So this type of conscience is what we call the scrupulous conscience. A scrupulous conscience is one which sees wrong where there is one. It is a type of conscience where it is afraid to commit evil. So scrupulous people means very careful to do things properly and correctly, such as paying friends back for money borrowed right away. So but these are the type of conscience na they're really scared to commit evil. And by them having second thoughts, still they choose to do the right thing. No? When your friend lent you some money to borrow, so they're really afraid. Especially right now. This is uso. Now when you're gonna ask or when you're gonna borrow money to your friends and then your friends and then dili mo bayaran. It is really a trend right now. But when you have a scrupulous conscience, instead na dili mo bayaran, bayaran dyan na nimo. Because again, you are afraid to commit evil. Among the other conscience, this one is the most, murag pinakabuutan na konsensya siguro. Because you're afraid to commit evil, you're afraid to do mistakes, you're afraid to do negative acts. So just like in the scenario na pwede gud niya iuli ang 3, but instead, pwede niya iuli sa ilaha ang 3 pesos, isud niya sa iyang wallet, but instead, she gave it back to the cashier. Kaya syempre, the cashier also has to pay that one kung ma-short siya. It will be deducted to her salary. So we're down to the next scenario. In this scenario, the most let's say the most concrete example for this one, and in terms of reality, is this marital affair and a two-timer boyfriend or girlfriend. Hmm. So is this a trend right now, having a marital affair? Yes, it is. Even teens mopatol sa tiguang or mopatol sa ninyo. And this is really the sad, or one of the sad thing in our society, because even a married person will tolerate such negative actions. It is really a dilemma in our society. So this is what we call the lax conscience. It is a type of conscience where it fails to see wrong, where obviously there is wrong. Suki ani si Rafi Tulfo, diba? Who among of you here have seen Rafi Tulfo? So I'm just assuming that you're raising your hands. If you've seen Rafi Tulfo, mostly, ang gi-air sa Rafi Tulfo is mostly those who are having third party, this a family that has been destroyed because of a third party, and in the sense na mas isog pa ang kabit kaysa legal. That's really a concrete example of lax conscience. Although they are really aware. They are aware that there's really something wrong. It is really, really wrong. But still, they're I don't know, for them for them maybe they consider it something good, but it's not really, because it satisfies them, it benefits them. So they really failed to see a clearer picture that what they actually do is wrong. What they did is wrong. No. And for teens, cheating, two-timer, third party, and then maingon pa na the kana bitang uso karon na moingon mo og gidelete ang convo is dili na siya cheating, where in fact it is already considered cheating. And may mga wala gituyo. No, cheating is dili mo mingon nga wala na ninyo gituyo, because cheating is a choice. It's not an accident. Remember that. You have actually, going back to our past lessons, no, you actually have the volition to choose what is right. So it is really a choice. So never say that wala ninyo na siya gituyo, because it is a choice. And that's a good example of lax conscience. Okay, so let us sum up everything. Let us enumerate the different types of conscience that we have discussed. So you have the antecedent conscience, the consequent conscience, the true conscience, the erroneous conscience, and the certain conscience, doubtful conscience, and the scrupulous conscience, and the lax conscience. So these were the different types of conscience. Okay, so I hope that you were able to identify the difference of each of these conscience, and I hope that you will be able to evaluate yourself as to what type of conscience nga ang nahitabo na sa inyo, ha, which you will be sharing that one for our quiz. Okay, so that ends our lesson 4. The lecture notes will be uploaded later. Okay, so thank you, God bless, and have a good day.